Good morning, y'all. Hope you're doing good today. So I don't have any notes today. I just have some things on my mind, and I thought it would be a good day to just have a super casual chat. Anyway, I hope you're doing well. I want to open by sharing a quote from this book, The Wisdom of the Native Americans. It's edited by Kent Nerburn. So I hope I'm saying that right. At the beginning of chapter 3, which is called The Ways of Learning, is a quote by, Chief Luther Standing Bear. And it says, "Knowledge was inherent in all things. The world was a library." And then it's like, there's more than that to the quote, but they don't actually put it here because I looked it up. But that alone, that opening part of the longer quote is just so true. It resonates for me. And I feel like what happens when you get very involved with a person or a group, right? Who has an agenda that you're unaware of. They are motivated by that agenda to steer you in the direction that will be most conducive to achieving their goal, right? One of the greatest analogies is like they're in the driver's seat. They're driving your car, right? And the way this can feel to you, because remember, for sometimes for some of us, especially when you're naive, right? You haven't experienced this kind of stuff. It can feel like it's very confusing. It feels like this person seems to have a very contradictory spirit, but you can't really pinpoint. They're so crafty, you might say, with their words, right? That it feels like every single thing you do, that you try to just, any of your initiatives at all, whether it's presenting just a very casual idea in a conversation, it can be down to that level, or whether it's just trying to arrange something in your house, or you bought a new t-shirt, or anything at all. Any expression that comes from you feels like a struggle. You ever have those dreams where you're running, but you're not getting anywhere? Those are awful. I haven't had one in many years, thank goodness. But it's kind of like your feet are moving. They're moving. And you're literally, you can't make traction. You see what I'm saying? Well, it's because, and I love to speak in metaphor because this is how I grasp things sometimes. It's because they're the ones driving your car, and you don't realize you're in the passenger seat and you're doing this, right? But they're actually the one that is actually in charge, right? So, I'm really not worried about this, but I'll just share this because this may be something that you may encounter, right? People who haven't gone through having their minds controlled, having it's essentially psychological abuse, okay? People who haven't gone through this kind of an experience, they're, based on my experience, they're not going to understand you. They're just not going to. They may a little bit at just an intellectual level, right? But that's it. That's where it stops, okay? And you're going to know this because their responses to you, even if they're trying to be supportive, are very flat. Someone who can hang with you intellectually on a concept, it's like you're both going to be moving up together, right? It's going to be, but people who haven't had the same experiences and develop the same understanding you have, it's like you could start moving together, but at some point they're going to reach this plateau and you keep going. And you're trying to pull them up here and you can't. You can't do it, right? So it's a hard thing to go through for so many reasons. But when you're out of it and you have taken back that authority that belonged to you all along, which is why I like to focus on that kind of topic through the lens of Jesus's teachings as an example, right? Self-empowerment. It's not like egoic self. It's that's your right, your God-given right, your divine inheritance to be in the driver's seat of your life. But when you misunderstand humility, see, and this is where we have to be careful. This is a whole nother topic that I thought about doing a video on, but maybe I'll touch on it here in a minute. But essentially, when you don't really have the right understanding of humility, you can willingly place yourself in that passenger seat, right? But you are making the assumption that this person cares for you. They care for you as themselves, which we're instructed to do in the Christian Bible, right? To love your brother as yourself. Love one another as yourself, right? That's the ultimate. That's what we're supposed to do. And so you're just assuming that they're doing that because you're doing that, right? But they're not. Again, they have a hidden agenda. And when I say they, I'm talking about people who are manipulative because they have hidden goals. And this places you in such a bad position. And I think it's hard because I think sometimes these goals, none of it's good, first of all. None of it's good. But some of these goals that they may have can be very, very malignant, very bad, and very dangerous for you. And so you're literally experiencing what it's like when it says in the Bible, "Behold, I send you out as sheep amidst the wolves," right? And you come to understand firsthand sometimes when you discover things and you uncover things, where it says, you know, that the devil roams around like a hungry lion or a ravenous lion, looking whom to devour or something like that, right? And that's hard because I just want to make a side note because we're going through the zodiac and everything, which I forgot to share this card with you all. I'll share it in just a minute. But you know, the symbolism of these animals, I don't think we need to go into black and white thinking and just associate, you know, the lion or wolves with, you know, evil. But because, you know, even I think God is symbolized by the lion sometimes too, right? And wolves are a beautiful creature, in my opinion, as well. But anyway, yeah, it places you in a very bad and sometimes very dangerous situation. And for some people, they can realize if they make it out of this entanglement, they can look back and realize how lucky they were to make it out alive. So, yeah, I think that there's a lot of people who do have hidden agendas. But I think that the ones who have really, really bad hidden agendas, maybe that's a little bit more rare. And so, yeah, sometimes people they're not gonna understand. It's almost like, and I think it's us too, when we're in it, we know that evil exists out there in the world. We know that. But we think that it's so rare that we'll probably never come face to face with it in our life. And so when we do, we're in complete denial, right? And it doesn't help the fact that they are constantly making you question yourself, and their actual just essence, their energy when you're in their presence is one of intimidation and dominance. And even if it's calm, there can be subtle cues that you pick up on, even if you don't even know language. You're going to pick up on, animals pick up on these kind of spirits. Babies can be intimidated without even understanding language. And so, excuse me, y'all. I'm still waking up. It's really early for me. But, yeah. So, when you're in these people's presence, this intimidation, this intimidating energy comes out, manifests in a lot of different ways. Sometimes it's in their stance. Sometimes it's in their gaze. Sometimes it's in their proximity. They're way closer to you than most everybody else is. Sometimes it's in how, if you're in a close relationship, how they grab your hand or your wrist. And then it's just, in other words, it's constant power plays, and it can be energetic, which you feel, but you can't, it's not concrete, like actual physical material in that realm, so you can't really point a finger and blame them. See, this is how they evade being able to be blamed, right? And again, the only reason I share any of this is I would say to try and make people aware, so that if they were to come across this content, they'd be able to spot it quicker and trust themselves and get out of it before something really bad happened to them. But I know what it's like when you're in a situation where you're not even able to consider some things. And so a lot of times this content, I think, is really best suited for people who've been through it. It's just a matter of validating and supporting one another and helping one another to heal and to reconnect or strengthen once again your alignment with your intuition, right? And if you're Christian, it would be the Holy Spirit, you know. So yeah, and this is where this quote comes in. Knowledge was inherent in all things. The world was a library. What these people do is they break that connection that it's just innate within us. It's put into us at birth, you know, the ability to observe and to believe what we see. And so we are conditioned or programmed to instead start believing a narrative or a fantasy or a story, or, you know, really it's deception is what it is. So as we know, words are very, very powerful, but they should, and they do, in a person with integrity, complement reality. But what has been broken in these situations, and sometimes I think on a larger scale, you know, if you want to look at it that way, is that when words and what's being spoken is contradictory to what is in nature, right? In all things, the world, right? There's a twisting that happens. It's like there's, is it called cognitive dissonance, where there's a gap there? So I think it's human nature in our psyches to want to build a bridge. And we're like, huh, that's weird. Really? Really? What we're being taught or told, right? And then what we see. And so what we do, this is why I feel very strongly about not making assumptions, right? Which is really kind of what I'm talking about here. So what we do is we build a bridge to try and make it make sense. And this is not a conscious effort. This is an automatic, unconscious thing that happens that is exploited. This mechanism within us is exploited by these people. They're like, I know if I put this BS out there, this narrative out there about whatever, okay? And they've witnessed something, you know, that maybe I slipped up and I said something I shouldn't have said, or whatever it is. First of all, I'm gonna gaslight these people and tell them, no, you didn't hear what you told me you heard. You know, they're gonna do that. They're going to shame you and make you feel like you're going crazy. Like, what? Where'd that come from? You know, stuff like that. So they're going to be gaslighting you, first of all. But the second thing is, and maybe sometimes this is like a second stage. Like if the gaslighting doesn't work and this person's like, no, I know what I heard. Then they may be like, well, maybe it's because blah, blah, blah. And it's never admitting to something. If they've already denied it, they're going to stick with that. That's my experience. But whatever this narrative is that these people come up with to try and patch up a crack that has opened up in their web of deception, or however you want to see it, right? They're going to try and patch that up. And they do that by exploiting everyone's. It's not just you. It's just like I say, I think it's innate. Our natural tendency to want to make things make sense. We want to be logical. I mean, we want to be able to believe what we see. God gave us our senses, our eyes and our ears and our brain to think about things. And he put things right in front of us to touch and taste and smell and see and, you know, feel. And when there's a discrepancy, we want to resolve that. You know, you can't just leave that out there and keep going in life. And so, yeah. And so this gets exploited when that bridge is built. They're the ones in the driver's seat of building that bridge. See? And so, again, so that you ultimately end up at the destination of a conclusion that is supportive to them achieving their goal. It's conducive to them meeting this, whatever this goal is. And so there's so many different goals that could be, these people could be after, but that's a little personal if I go into examples. I really don't feel comfortable doing that right now. One of these days I'm going to do a live, and I think it would just be fun if anybody wants to join me, but I'm just kind of, I don't know, I just I'm a little nervous. Feels like you're on stage or something, so I don't know. Maybe one day. But let's take a little break, and yeah, I want to share these cards. Yeah, and this is a cool little set. And what's interesting is, because I forgot to share this with you all, can you see the bumps on the back of this sheet? And all you do is, like, they're not totally punched through, right? But almost. So all you have to do is just take a little toothpick. That's what I did. And just, you know, they're marked on the front. So you just go through on the front and you just poke them out, all right? And then you can hold them up to a light and see. I've got a little video actually of this I want to share with you all. You can see the light coming through to see the stars, the constellation. It teaches you what this particular constellation looks like, so you'll be able to identify it. And it's just got so many of them. What's really strange, and I've checked this, I wonder if this is because of their positioning in the heavens. I haven't examined this specifically on every card, but everyone I've seen, everyone I've come across, and even right now when I'm looking through them, this is strange because there's like a little I'll show you this one, for example. This is kind of different. This is Delphinius, Sagitta and Aquila, I don't know, and Antinous or something. Yeah, this constellation is just really beautiful. I love the art. But on almost all the cards, or really all the cards I've seen so far, literally every one of them, there's a little compass, right? A little directional piece that's like a compass. And of course it's got the arrow for north, and then it has the S for south, but the east and the west are reversed. So I don't understand that. I don't get that. Maybe it has something to do with the positioning of these constellations and how we see them. I don't know. but just really interesting. And so, again, I think it's kind of sad. Yeah, I think it's kind of sad that if you have any interest in the stars with regards to the stories that have been created, like the myths and the legends and all that, right? It's kind of like if you go to talking about that kind of stuff with the average person, general public or whatever, sometimes they immediately have this association with, it's kind of like there's assumptions that are just drawn immediately, and especially, and this gives Christianity a bad name, I'm gonna be honest, and I can understand why. And I think a lot of us, if we're being honest, we can understand why it gives this belief system a bad name. Is that people, it's supposed to be founded on and all about love and loving one another, and yet, and yes, iron does sharpen iron, and we are supposed to help one another get back on the path if one of our members, the members of the body of Christ, have strayed, and I get that, but this often manifests as very inconsiderate judgment and haughty and righteousness, self-righteousness, and it's kind of like you can even see self-righteousness in a lot of people. That like humility. I feel like the devil, if you want to go this route to talk about it, this lens, I think the devil can exploit our ego, our egoic tendencies, and turn humility into self-righteousness. Someone can actually be prideful of how humble they are, and that's the kind of stuff that really, I think, can turn people away from Jesus. And it's just something, to take note of. And yeah, and also, the church, this is my belief, and there's nothing against, if you like going to church, that's fine, but like church isn't, a building and a group of people, that does, per my experience, seem to be a hot spot for people seeking that cloak, the wolves, to keep up their sheep's clothing. That's a hot spot for that, a mask, and also I think probably where these wolves in sheep's clothing may go to find an actual sheep to exploit and manipulate and use and all this stuff too, right? And I think a lot of us just know that. All this stuff goes without saying for many, many of us. We know this. So you have to really, really get rooted down deep into your discernment, right? Okay. So, how did I get way off on that tangent? This is what happens when you don't have notes. I say you, but when I don't have notes, it's like I have to reel myself back in. I have to catch myself. But yes, back to this direction. I just think that's really strange. Yeah. But yeah, I think the stars are obviously part of creation, and they're beautiful, and they're intriguing, and they're mysterious, and all that's wonderful. So then comes the concept of who are the story makers? Who are the ones that create all the myths and the legends and all this stuff? Is it humans? Because even Jesus taught in parables, right? And those were stories that had a deeper meaning, a dual meaning, a twofold, double meaning. And so you might argue that, people throughout time, even, I'm sure before Jesus too, it's kind of like story making's just always been there. It's always been there. And what a person makes of it, it's just very personal, and a personal choice, whether we take these things literal or metaphorical and spiritual, or just as life lessons or whatever, or maybe it's both. Maybe sometimes these stories are literal and actual. It's just that we don't have the framework to grasp that, because maybe our world is different now than when they were first written. You know what I mean? And so there's no, again, remember, what book was it in? One of the books I shared with you all was talking about how this group of natives in some country literally did not even see a ship that had arrived right in front of them on the coast, because they had never even, they didn't know the concept of it, and so they didn't see it. So it's like and I think that's a true story, but I don't know if the mind blocks it or what, but and I do think the mind blocks things out when you're dysregulated, when you are intimidated, when you're fearful. You can dissociate unknowingly, and I think that's why sometimes you don't have certain memories, you know, especially in a really stressful event. But when you don't have familiarity and some type of experience or framework for understanding something, then obviously these stories, again, we're going to try to build a bridge and make sense of them, right? So therefore we might try to make them make sense per our experience, per our life. And so I think a lot of times that's how these myths and legends become symbolic to us, because it's like that's the only way they make sense. But who's to say that, you know, there's not more to them, you know? But we just don't. Again, we know that, well, if you believe like the Christian Bible as an example, we know that our actual material, physical, literal reality can change drastically. There's evidence for cycles in this realm, this material, actual realm, all over the place. And so, you know, who's to say that this place didn't look totally different many, many years ago? And who's to say it's not going to look totally, totally different many, many years to the future? You know, we don't know. But ultimately, I think the theme of this discussion, again, it's always my goal, even if I make notes, even if my message is more structured, right? I don't ever want to be perceived as a presenter, or this being a presentation, because it's not that formal. I could do that if I wanted, but it's just not what I want for my channel. It's just a kind of like, you know, I was telling a friend of mine on the phone the other day, you know, it's kind of, my intention is kind of like just friends sitting down having coffee together, right? Hang on. I almost got choked. Excuse me. So I don't know what you guys like with your coffee, but when I go to Dunkin', I get their iced coffee with 2 caramel swirl and 7 cream. I know, it's a lot of cream, but for the most part, I burn it off. I burn off those calories. I did a lot of yard work yesterday. I actually went and bought some herbs, and, you know, just oregano and that kind of stuff, peppermint, and and some, I think they're called coneflowers. I had been at Home Depot a few weeks ago. Y'all, my hair, I didn't put my cream in today. I've been at Home Depot a couple of weeks ago and took some pictures of things I liked, and one of them was coneflowers. And there's another channel that I watched that I really liked, that she had shown some coneflowers, and I was like, oh my gosh, I forgot about those. So I went and bought some, and I've planted 2 out of the 4, but my ground was so hard. Oh my God, trying to shovel up, you know, dig up holes for these plants, I could only do 2. But I also planted my herbs, and I raked a whole bunch of leaves. I know, I had left the leaves over in these areas, thinking that they would break down, but they really didn't break down as much as I thought they would. So I had to do all that. Anyway, that's how I get my workouts. I still do yoga some. I don't do it as much as I'd like. I am trained officially as a teacher. I may do that one day, I don't know, but I thought I was going to have an opportunity to do paddleboard yoga locally, and I'm not able to do that right now. So maybe in the future. That's really cool. I did it once as a class, and it was cool. But I try to stay active. You know, I walk. I like to walk. Sometimes I jog. I used to jog a lot, but I burn it off. Long story short. So yeah, if you want to share your favorite coffee recipe, I'd love to hear it down below. And always tastes better when you go out and buy it, right? I don't know what it is. I try different ways to make it at home, and even to replicate my favorites at home. No, it's never the same as when you go buy it. But that's okay. Yeah, I view it as, you know, if I go and spend the money for coffee like this, at least it helps people, you know, that are making the coffee, and helps them to, you know, have a steady paycheck coming in, and puts food on their table and stuff. That's how I look at it. But yeah, I'm always hoping that my content is just enjoyed as just a casual chat, you know, because I think a lot of times we just need that. We need that. And again, you may find yourself, after coming out of these weird situations, and having tried to share some of this with people that, you know, you've always been close with, and they just can't relate. And it's sort of, you still love these people, you still care about these people, but you're not able to connect with them really anymore. And so it's just sometimes layers and layers and layers, or stages multiple of losses. And I think that there's really something to be said with regards to your mental health and connection with others, and also longevity, you know, of your life. It matters. You can be a very independent person, but we still need one another, you know what I mean? And so that's why I do this. Yeah, so I had this dream several years ago. I've had, gosh, 7 or 8 dreams or so. I haven't counted them, but that have really registered with me. They did immediately, and they have stuck with me, but they registered as like prophetic and really important. Like, I need to take note of this. And they're so profound, you know, as much as I forget, and God knows I forget a lot, but I haven't forgotten these dreams. There's been no need to write them down, really. But I had this one dream that was strange. And well, first of all, I've had multiple dreams of being in a particular house, and then I wound up in real life living in this house. So that I've had multiple prophetic dreams about that. But I had this one dream where there were these men, and they were Christ-like. I would just say Christ-like. Not like the standard religious type, you know, what you would see in organizations and stuff when you think about that. But I'm just talking about like actual very spiritual dudes, right? And they were going around in this old car, and people revered them. We didn't even know who they were, but they were going through the neighborhood, and they were going house to house, and everybody was very scared of them because they were important in some way. And so they wound up coming to my house, and I had excuse me, I had several lot of people in my house that I kind of knew, just different jobs I've had and stuff like that, but I wasn't close to for whatever reason in my dream. And when these men came in the house, everybody conversation just died, right? They were peaceful, but they had authority about them, right? And they had these sickles, I think is what they're called. I've had to Google it. I didn't even know what it was. And so they were holding, each one of them had a sickle. And so I automatically, none of us knew what this was about or who they were or anything, but it was, you know, again, they were kind of intimidating. They were very intimidating. Instinctively, as soon as I knew they were coming into the house, I went to my bedroom and I found a sickle, right? And which was weird. I didn't even know I had one. And so I found one under my bed, and I walked into the living room and I held it up to show them, I don't know, like I understood them, I was one of them, I would be compliant. I don't even know what it meant. It was just all instinctive, right? And I woke up from it, and I've been trying to figure this out ever since then. Well, as life has gone on for me, thank God, right? Every day's a blessing, a gift. But all of these dreams that I've had have been have made more and more and more sense, right? And some I'm still figuring out. Okay, so what's interesting is this is what I wanted to share, the symbolism of the sickle. It's about harvesting, right? And when we think of spiritually the parable of the wheat and the tares, right? And it's said to let them grow up together, right? And until the harvest. And then, and when you think about, reaping and tools that would reap, right? Reap a harvest. What's interesting is, I was looking up reap, and because you think about, this is what I think when I hear that word. I think about like, the reaper, the spirit of death or whatever, right? And of course we know there's spiritual death, and I think you can be spiritually dead in the sense that you are not a part of the good side. So many different ways I could say this. I'm like, which way do I want to say this? But in other words, just you can be very rooted and grounded and living materialistically and in the world, right, and spiritually dead in that manner, or you can be dead to the world, right, in the world but not of it. So in that sense, you are spiritually alive and dead to the world. So there's so many different ways a person can perceive the concept of death, but essentially the reaper or to reap has always been associated with death, for me. And that seemed to be the spirit that was carried with these guys, which was interesting because everybody was very solemn and revered them, and even though we didn't understand it. And so but it struck me, like, why did I feel compelled to go and pick this thing up? And the only thing that makes sense to me, I've been looking up the etymology of some of these words, which is just fascinating to me. I started going to college with the intention of being an English lit major, and I wound up moving to art. And I still have a great interest in both, the visual arts, symbolism and meaning, and communication that way, and as well as, words, language. But the etymology of, I believe it was reap, I'll double check and drop in the description, is actually to bring together and unite, which goes along with that parable, see, because it says, to gather up, the wheat and the tares, and talks about bringing the wheat into the barn, right, or the storehouse, but it's to gather up, gather together. So there's so much symbolism when you think about a house or a structure, or a temple. Even our bodies are described as a temple in the Bible, a spiritual temple, but gathering together. And so in that manner, the church is really not about a building, but it's the members, right, through the Christian lens of the body of Christ. And so there's a lot that I like to break down and think about and go really deep into, but it would just be an extra long conversation. I don't really want to go into that today, but I think that when we think about knowledge being inherent in all things, believing what we see with our eyes and what we hear with our ears, right, what we experience firsthand, and how the method used to place us in danger sometimes and to exploit us and use us and stuff like that is the spoken word. And oftentimes it's not the only way. Sometimes your reality can be manipulated in other ways by messing with your stuff, things like that, right? But But what's being exploited is this storytelling, what we tell ourselves, this bridge that we try to make between the knowledge that is inherent in all things through firsthand witnessing and experience. The bridge that we build from that to trying to this other story, either in word form or in a different manufactured experience because of what's been done or whatever. There's a story. So you have reality and you have a story. You have objective and subjective. And we build bridges. That's what we do. And again, I don't think this is a conscious process, but you know, it's kind of like in our DNA. It's in our makeup to try to unify, to try and unify things. And make sense of them in that manner. And it's this natural tendency that's within all of us that gets exploited. And so I think there's no coincidence that people who have been through trauma, you know, are sometimes seen as fractured, which is a term used a lot in psychology around what happens to a person's psyche when they go through traumatic events. There's like a breaking apart. And so it's just, it's kind of like, even when you're in the healing process and you're trying to make sense of things, you know, like let's say that you went through a very confusing relationship and you were gaslit, you dealt with a lot of deception that you bought into because you loved this person, but yet it was totally contradictory to what you were seeing firsthand and hearing firsthand. And you know, you built bridge after bridge after bridge after bridge, and you tolerated and you made excuses, and you placed yourself in the position of, well, I must be crazy, or there's something wrong with me. And you may have even gone to a therapist and been like, here's what I'm experiencing, what's wrong with me? And that, you know, their jaw hits the floor, and they start teaching you about things like abuse and stuff like that, and you're like, what, you know. So when you come out of those kind of situations and you are, I'm not saying you're broken, I'm just saying your worldview and the way you have gone about maybe understanding things, that's kind of been cracked a bit, you might say. Okay? So when you try to go back to being whole again, or unified within yourself, your own mind, and being strong or aligned with your intuition or the Holy Spirit, you know, what do you do? How do you get there? You build bridges. You and this is where you have the God-given authority to do so. And what you didn't realize you did was you handed that over to this other person. And it's not like I'm saying it's your fault, because it was likely weaseled out of your hands. You know what I mean? You were made to believe you can't even trust yourself. You can trust this person instead, you know, which is why a lot of times they try to convince you in so many different ways that they're so smart, that they know so much more than you know, to believe them more than yourself, you know. And sometimes out of love, you do wind up doing that. But which plays right into their power play. But anyway, but you're having to build those bridges yourself now. And I think sometimes in doing so, we go on a quest. We go on a quest. And what we do is we look at stories throughout time, through different cultures, and in so many different avenues, like myths and legends and fairy tales and parables and different religious texts and spiritual texts and philosophies and just amazing books from people who have been there and who have done a lot of work themselves and maybe started to pave a path for you to take your next steps or whatever. We listen to music. We really kind of get into that. We evaluate the lyrics and we watch movies and we do all this stuff. And what we're doing is we're evaluating now stories. And because in truth, we have our reality right in front of us, right? It's kind of like, why can't we just take that for that? Why can't we just take it for what it is right in front of us, right? Because I think there's a process of what you call integration. Like, it has to be integrated. Does that make sense? Like, you can see stuff, but it has to mean something to you, to have an impact in your life, or to be useful. So things have to be integrated. And in order for it to be integrated, again, you need a framework. You have to have some, like I was talking about the natives that couldn't even see the boat because they had never heard of it or been taught about it. They couldn't literally even see it. So once you've been made aware of how all this stuff works, you're kind of on a quest to make sense of things. And you want to be real careful with the stories that you tell yourself, right? So this is where it's kind of like, how do you navigate this? How do you navigate this process? This is the really cool part. The cool part of it is, again, you have options. You could let this person jump in the driver's seat, right? Which you may have probably already tried that. You could just jump onto a bandwagon of sorts, a group, which that's risky. All this stuff right here I'm talking about is risky, because then it's kind of like a we call that a hive mentality, or like a, which can, that whole group then can be steered in the wrong direction. You're very vulnerable then. You can find an already established a narrative or a bridge that's been built from ancient cultures and just kind of adopt that. But I think for a lot of us, we want to pave our own path, and we want to take our time, and we want to consider it all. And I was talking about the cool part. This is where you have an opportunity to strengthen your connection to your inner guiding light, or through the Christian lens, the Holy Spirit. Because what that's all about is discernment. That's what you're doing. You're cultivating discernment. And in so doing, your story is something that's, it's kind of a moment-to-moment thing. You are no longer committed to a narrative that is rigid and unbending and not growing. It's stagnant. That's not how you're living anymore. You are moving. You are, and there's a freedom in that, and there's a lightness in that, because you're on foot. You are, to me, this is a great exemplification, if that's even a word, of humility in action. That's what this is. And I think that this right here can be a big reason why you don't relate to a lot of people, because a lot of people do find comfort in just jumping on a bandwagon of sorts, a belief system, and they're just boxed in by that. And you're not that way. You think outside the box. And so, yes. I love the fact that, Jesus was always on the move. He was always on the move. And he, they didn't want him to go away. The people that were going with him, they were like, don't leave us. And he was like, look, it's got to happen. But take comfort, because, I have to leave. And I have to leave so that the Holy Spirit will come into and unto you, unto and into you. And so that's integration. That's what that is. He was their external source that became their internal source. This guidance is fluid, It's fluid. It's like water, like the old proverb or whatever, be like water, and there's freedom in that. That's freedom. You're not bound by the chains of a box of some kind of, I'm missing the word, dogma, or just some bandwagon of sorts. A hive mentality, a group mentality, groupthink. You're not bound by that anymore. But that kind of makes it hard again for you to feel like you belong sometimes. But that's okay, because I think that is the path. And the cool thing is, you realize along the path, and what is this path? It's walking by faith. It's the faith walk in action. You realize in doing this that others are doing it too. And you're not actually alone. And it's a beautiful process. And it's a beautiful experience. And so I just want to encourage you. I'm not sure. It's not like I've made it somewhere, or I'm way advanced in my walk or nothing like that. Please don't ever take anything I say like that. But and look, I have days that are hard. I have days where I question myself. I have all that stuff. But so far, this has been the process for me, and it is healing, and it is restorative, and it's sustaining. It's sustaining. Will you have moments where you look back on your past and you continue to question yourself? Yeah, you will, because you were conditioned to do that for so long. Sure, you will. But you're going to wind up, if you're like me, drawing the same conclusions. Memories are interesting. I need to wrap this up. It's long. Let me tell you why. I've shared with you all, I had a management position once, right? Well, a couple different times, but and so, cameras, this is where you've got, the literal, actual, physical, right? Cameras show what goes down. But if you talk to people about what goes down in a situation, you're going to get several different stories. And, when you first start hearing people's stories, you might think this person's lying or that person's lying. But the more you talk to people, you're like, they can't all be liars. And you realize, and you can start to, when you accept this possibility within your own life, you can start to see this is a truth. I have. That memories are, and I wonder if it's this way even when in the present moment. I don't know, but I think for sure memories seem to be recorded within us energetically. It's not what actually happens that gets logged. It's our perception, and it's not even just our perception that gets logged, but it's the way we felt in that moment made us perceive what happened in a certain way. And it's not, I don't know if it's always or sometimes or what, but it's not actual. And that's something to think about and journal on. It's really interesting. I mean, it can be way off. I mean, not totally off, but way off in detail. And you realize that that the difference is, I think, people's not just feelings, but their current paradigms or biases that twist reality within their own mind. Maybe they were thinking in the present moment as something was happening, about something happening, I don't know, and it really didn't, but it got logged in their mind as it did. But it's just it's an incredible thing. I have no idea why I brought up memories, because I was thinking about making a video about that, about are they energetically logged as opposed to actually logged as actual. So just something to think about. It's been really long. I'm gonna go ahead and try to cut this off before an hour long. Thank you if you made it through all this. Thanks. I appreciate you being here. I do, and walking this path with me. And I'd love to hear your opinion on content on this channel. You know, what do you like? Do you like hearing about the different zodiacs or not? Do you like book reviews? Do you like casual conversations like this? Do you think my presentations or my videos are more favorable when they're going off notes or not? I would just love to hear your thoughts if you feel called to share them. So again, thanks so much for coming along to hear the message. I hope that you have a beautiful day, and I hope you have some really great coffee or something good to drink today. And I hope you have a beautiful day, and I'll see you again very soon.